bent over, has 5, has 10, Burgos a man, and he goes all the way to the 15-yard line. 17 yards of the carry.
All right, welcome back to another edition of the Believe in Badger Football podcast on the Believe Podcast Network, presented by BetOnline.ag. Once again, I'm Matt Perkins, joined by very special guest and another Matt Sims, who is kind enough to join me today to talk about Nick Evers, Phil Longo, the Badgers recruiting. Matt's a recruiting expert. Thanks so much for hopping on with me today.
Well, I appreciate you saying that I'm an expert. I don't know if I'm quite to that level yet where you can say that, but nonetheless, I do appreciate the shout out.
For sure. Yeah, you can check out Matt on the Believe Podcast Network. He's scouting guys with our friend Joe DeLeon every week, so make sure to check that out. And make sure to check out our presenting sponsor, BetOnline.ag. They continue to be your number one source for all of your online sports wagering needs. You name it, they've got it over at BetOnline.ag. NFL, NBA, esports, golf, college football, college basketball, baseball. I mean, bowling, who knows? It's over there at betonline.ag. So head on over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus with our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, Matt, we are going to start by talking about Nick Evers, the newest transfer quarterback commit for the Badgers. A massive pickup in a lot of ways. Matt, this kid is super talented. What's the first thing when you look at his film that pops off to you?
Well, I think the main thing that you got to look for any quarterback is just, do you see just a natural disposition at the position of quarterback, right? This is a guy that looks extremely comfortable. He looks extremely poised in the pocket. He has a live arm. He is athletic. And with the addition of obviously Coach Phil Longo, what he brings from that UNC offense up there to Wisconsin, it's going to be, I think, a really good match where both people can get the most out of this opportunity and the new landscape of the Big Ten for both of them.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting opportunity as well, because the Badgers haven't had like a true dual threat since Russell Wilson, and that was sort of,
right.
That was a one-off season in a lot of ways, right? He's kind of the original quarterback transfer in a lot of ways that set off this new era, even pre-transfer portal. And so I know a lot of Badger fans are really excited about the potential of having a threat of a quarterback in the run game. Just for bigger picture, what does that do to a defense? How does that stretch a defense?
Well, I think big picture wise too, I think Wisconsin fans have to keep in mind that everything that they're going to see this coming year is going to be new. The coaching staff and that adjustment of finding players that fit the schemes that they want to run, how they're going to adjust that type of offensive play style to the Big Ten football, opponents that they play against. So there are going to be some growing pains. Nonetheless, these growing pains, I think, will be growing pains of excitement and fun. There's going to be a little bit more of an aggressive play style to it. And I think that will entice more athletes, which Wisconsin in the past has been more so dominant in that front seven aspect, having good offensive, defensive lines, linebackers, good running backs. I think we may see a turn of the tide as far as conceptually what they're trying to accomplish there. But for this year, a lot of exciting things. Coach Fickell, there's nothing bad you can say about the guy. Everywhere he's been, he's had a great impact on just the coaches, his assistant coaches, the players that he had in his program. So a lot to be excited for Nick Evers, for Phil Longo, and of course, Coach Fickell.
Yeah, I love the Longo. I love the Longo edition. And the thing that really stands out to me, we'll talk about him a little bit more in detail just a second.
Right.
He might be quote unquote air raid learning at the knee of Mike Leach, but he ain't afraid to run he's not afraid to run the ball. I mean, we saw that 2 years ago with Javonte Williams and Michael Carter.
I am so happy that you mentioned that, because that was one of the main notes that I, triple, quadruple starred, in my notepad, is that they are a good running football team. Statistically, they do a really good job of controlling the line of scrimmage with that spread out formation and attacking down the field vertically in their passing game. It does really open up a lot of advantageous situations for them to take advantage of just nickel packages, dime packages of defenses where they can be a little little bit more aggressive and take advantage of those opportunities.
Awesome. Well, let's take a quick look here at some of the tape from Evers, because I think it's really, really interesting, because you're going to see a quarterback who is completely different. You're going to see a quarterback that's completely different from the kind of guys we've seen before. I mean, the other thing that really, stands out to me is the fact that, this kid he's tall. He is tall and he is big, and, he can seemingly make all the throws. What do you see? What's the first thing that pops out here as we put on the film?
Yeah, I mean, even with this first clip right there, you just see the quick release and the ability to throw it when he's kind of off balance and on his back foot. Here you just see the athleticism, the change of direction, and then just the overall top end speed, which you got to love as just an overall athlete. You're absolutely right. I think his presence, he's listed as 6'3" on film. He actually kind of looks a little bit taller and longer than that. But right here, the throw on the run right there, on the run to the left right there, you see him able to turn his upper body against the direction that his hips and feet are pointed and throw an absolute dime. Here you just see the touch and rhythm of the throw. You're going to see a lot of that in his highlights, which are really impressive. He makes it look very easy a lot of the times. But you see right here just the natural rhythm, dropping back, dropping a dime on the sideline. That was another note that I made. He has the ability to push the ball vertically down the field. He also has the ability to push the football outside the numbers, which I think is always important, especially against some of these tougher Big Ten football teams. If you can take advantage of the sidelines more and more often, that's going to be a good way for having success as an offense. And then really right there, go ahead. Sorry.
I want to just break in there for a second, because we've seen some of the more successful offenses recently. You look at like a Tennessee, and they are using all 53 and a third yards of the width of the field. That's not something we've seen out of Wisconsin in a long time.
Right.
Now that they have with a quarterback like this who has the arm strength, like you said, not just to push it vertically, but to make those quick throws that are all the way out to the sidelines. What can that do for an offense?
Oh, well, I mean, really the greatest thing is that you're just going to be putting yourselves in advantageous situations more often than not. In this type of situation, you're spreading the field out. You're making it extremely difficult for the defense to commit to what they're doing, right? So it's going to be easy for a quarterback like Nick Evers to be able to identify what the defense is doing by those spread formations, forcing the defense to commit. It's going to be easier to identify man situations, pressure situations, which is going to play right into the hand of Coach Phil Longo, being able to put Nick Evers or whoever the starting quarterback is in successful situations that take advantage of certain defenses that try to win feast or famine style by being over aggressive.
Yeah, and we've seen Wisconsin in the past. Part of I think the frustration on the part of fans in a lot of ways is the offense that Paul Chryst and even Bobby Ingram, the first-year coordinator this year, ran. A lot of these plays took so long to develop, and this has not been a vintage offensive line the last couple of years, and they haven't been able to hold up for an old school play action 7-step drop. I think that one of the things that I see both in Longo's offense and the skill set of Evers is the ability to make those really quick decisions, first read, second read, and then either take off or check down. And that is going to be a big, big difference, I think, for this offense.
It definitely will be, and I think there will be an added level of excitement just for the entire team to kind of play this style of football. I do think it will be an adjustment really for the entire culture of Wisconsin to get more comfortable with this style of football. It may take a little time, but at the same time, the one thing that really Wisconsin needs to focus on, and this is where Coach Luke Fickell will come into play and even help Phil Longo with that, is UNC struggled with just red zone offense a year ago. They were very good at creating just explosive football plays, tons of plays of 20 or plus yards or more. That is something that they will continue to do extremely well at Wisconsin, once they kind of get used to what they're trying to do schematically as a whole, organization. But the red zone stuff has to improve. They have to find new creative ways to take advantage of the quarterback running the football and still being old school tough when they need to in that Big Ten conference. Because when in doubt, listen, Ohio State, they do a great job of creating great big plays. Michigan has done a good job of making the game really ugly and tough when they match up against them. So despite the fact that Ohio State's doing a great job every year of putting up numbers statistically, at the end of the day, to win the Big Big Ten, you do have to be physically tough in certain situations, especially in the low red zone.
Yeah, and I think that, Longo, for all of, like we talked about a second ago, like all the air raid stuff that everyone associates him with, go back 3 years when they had or 2 years when they had running back talent, they were great in the red zone, right? And so
right.
I think that the red zone issues that North Carolina faced this year was a combination of they had a really light offensive line.
Correct.
Secondly, first year quarterback, I don't care how great Drake May was, 20 to 20, it gets, as you know, way tougher once you're inside the red zone because there's a lot less vertical space to work with. The defense is way more compressed. They're going to be tighter throwing lanes. He wasn't quite as efficient. And then they just didn't have the same running game. You bring Phil Longo with a back like Braylon Allen. What can Longo's offense do for Braylon Allen and the Wisconsin running game that we haven't seen over the last few seasons?
Well, I think you're just going to see similar things that you've kind of seen in the past from Wisconsin's run game, but just it's going to have a little bit different look to it. It's going to be a similar restaurant, but man, the chef is a little different and he's going to add his special sauce to it. So you're just going to see different formations, similar concepts that are done formationally in a different way to take advantage of just, again, matchups with the spread out field as much as possible, and that's really where he is going to make his hay for creating big plays in that run game. And, this is why I kind of mentioned the red zone stuff, though, too, is because, that style of play is really good. What they need to do, though, is they need to go look at like the Philadelphia Eagles offense, and they need to start to steal some of those concepts that they do, because that is a team right now in the NFL that knows exactly how to create those matchups in those spread formations with the running quarterback that's athletic and tough, and really get points on the board, especially in those crunch time situations.
And so one of the things that I think is going to be really important for them is to get a bigger physical receiver. We've seen guys like Josh Downs really be able to dominate in this system because he's a bigger physical receiver. Diami Brown was the same way a couple seasons ago. Wisconsin right now has, Chimere Dike is their wide receiver one. He is a slider guy. I think Skylar Bell, he really came on this year as a freshman All-American, bigger kid from the Bronx, 6'2", a little bit thicker. And I think that's kind of the more style of receiver we are going to see come in. What other sort of different body types do you think we will see in Longo's offense than the, sort of the old school big lumbering guys we're used to seeing at Wisconsin?
Yeah, I mean, I really think overall for Wisconsin, and I think Coach Fickell will do a fantastic job of kind of changing the narrative and how they approach recruiting. I think you just need overall team speed. I think really one of the biggest separators between you and the upper echelon of those Big Ten football teams is the fact that they just have a little bit better team speed overall. And that goes for, the defense, the linebackers, and the secondary positions. But really, for Wisconsin, we're talking about the skill positions at the receiver especially. You're always going to have those big, tall, lanky guys that you want to take advantage of in those one-on-one situations. Those are always, great advantageous situations for a quarterback to be in when you have that size matchup. But I think they really need to start to, include that shifty running back / slot receiver guy, that can do a little of everything and be a gadget player like we see so many other high-powered offenses use across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, given the personnel on the roster right now, Braylon Allen's not necessarily going to be the guy. He's a big, thick, running back. I think you could see someone like a Vinny Anthony, who was a true freshman receiver who saw the field this year in a lot of like jet sweeps and stuff like that. I could see him having a big, big impact next season. Now, he is definitely the type of player, you're right, that with this new offense and scheme, with that RPO running game and stuff like that, can make a dramatic impact in just a year. Yeah, and I'm really, like I said before, I'm so excited just to see the quarterback run game back because it helps to keep a defense honest so much. I want to move forward into the Badgers 2023 class coming up because it is, it's interesting when you undergo this coaching change. There've been a lot of decommits, a lot of new guys coming on board that weren't necessarily the guys that we thought had in the class 6 months ago. And so I'm interested, I know you've gone through the list. Who stands out to you in this class at the moment?
So the first, I kind of put three guys up there that I think are just important football players for Coach Fickell as far as just establishing the new regime, the new mindset of this Wisconsin football team. Braden Moore was one, the athlete, 6'1", 190. Jace Arnold, the cornerback, 5'10", 170. And then I had Christian Allegro, the linebacker from Avon All Farms, the 6'3", 220-pound middle linebacker. I think those three football players are very good football players for Luke Fickell to come in, establish his new mindset to the program. His new group here, these young football players, I think epitomize what he wants in a football team: toughness, discipline, athleticism, but also too just guys that really understand how to be a part of like a bigger culture. And not only that, but just make multiple impacts in different ways. Braden Moore is an athlete. He does really well on both sides of the football. I saw him do a lot of great things at the receiver position. He also looks extremely impressive at the safety position. The same thing with Jace Arnold. He's a very good cover corner, and I'm curious to see how and what style of defense they'll play with him at that corner position. But he's also a fantastic punt returner and kick returner. So I expect to see him make an impact special teams wise for Coach that way as well. And then Christian Allegro, I think, is just like your old school hard nosed, just like middle linebacker, outside linebacker in the Big Ten, who has tremendous upside, has the frame, and I think with just a little bit more coaching experience, really can be a fantastic football player for the Badgers.
I really like Allegro too. He looks like an old school Midwest Mike in a lot of ways, right? 6'4",
Right,
220.
right.
PG kid. I actually really like kids who do PG years. They come in more physically developed and a lot more mentally developed in a lot of ways. And I think
Absolutely.
that, when you're recruiting kids, you're not necessarily, you don't have to be projecting to NFL. Recruiting a PG guy, they're probably going to be more ready to make an immediate impact as a true freshman, and you're not losing a year of eligibility by redshirting them. So I am typically very pro bringing in, a couple PGs every year. And I think this kid is going to be a beast. It sounds like they're going to use him as a hybrid, like you mentioned, inside and outside. But you touched on Braden Moore, and I actually want to bring up his film a little bit because as far as athletes go, he may have the most natural athleticism in this class. He can do it all. I think his highest projection, like I'm talking NFL level, is at the safety position, but he could definitely be an impact guy in the slot.
Yeah, and that's where, he will be an interesting project for Coach Longo and for Coach Fickell, because I don't quite see him as someone that's like super twitchy, but I do see as we've discussed with Josh Allen, on TV, just a really good football player, a guy who has good football IQ, plays the football extremely well in the air, just like you see here in this clip, and you see it on the offensive side of the football too. Extremely comfortable with running routes down the field, tracking the football with defenders draped all over him. I mean, that was definitely pass interference, but it didn't matter. He still made the play, and you just can't really teach his size and athleticism and his ability to track the football like that. So this is where he's going to be an interesting prospect for me and this Badgers team as far as what they decide to do with him, because to me, he is someone that actually, can have a role on potentially all three phases of your team. We see right here his ability for the punt returns, and being reliable hands that way. We also see the receiver skill set and then the safety skill set, which actually doesn't appear on his highlight film quite as much as some other things. You see him more at corner, but nonetheless, I do love his overall athleticism and what he can bring to the program going forward.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of his as well. I think that you need more athletes like that in the Wisconsin. It's been very clear what some of their Fickell's recruiting strategy is already. They're bringing in D-backs because the Wisconsin D-backs last year, they're losing a ton of corners, and the safeties were getting burned left and right last year. Like the front seven was great, but they've been very susceptible to the deep ball the last couple of years. They need more, athletes and playmakers on the back end, and it looks like that's what they're going to be going for, especially as they switch to a 3-3-5. Quick question for you, like how does a 3-3-5 sort of, how is that a different style of defense than even like the 3-4 and the 4-3s that we're used to? Because I know it can put a very different type of pressure on the offense.
Yeah, so 3-3-5s, I mean, all of it kind of ends up being the same thing, right? But the 3-3-5 is really just another way of taking advantage of just what your skill set and your unit has at its availability. And I think what Coach Fickell is trying to do is he is just trying to put more speed on the field by running this 3-3-5 and being able to add another safety/star that can run cover, and pressure the quarterback. So what you're really trying to do is you're kind of trying to find like a jack of all trades at that linebacker safety position where you could do multiple fronts, confuse quarterbacks and offensive lines at the college level, and really just create havoc and just big play capability in the defensive side of the football. We saw him have great success, at Cincinnati, defensively with his ability to spot talent on the defensive side of the football. So I expect those same things to be happening here at Wisconsin as well. A lot of confusion, overall athleticism. Doesn't really matter if the person is fits in that perfect box of being a Mike linebacker or a Will linebacker. At the end of the day, he's really good. He plays well in space. He can cover ground and he can hit and have fun. And I think that's what Coach Fickell wants in his team.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very exciting. A lot of very exciting stuff for Badger fans. So we will be breaking down more of the recruits post signing day. We're going to have to bring you back for that. What I want to switch into now, though, talk about a little bit more about you growing up, because you grew up in a family of quarterback royalty. You're a Sims. Your dad, your brother. I mean, everyone is, everyone knows everyone there. First of all, I have to ask you, how competitive was it in your household growing up? Because I cannot even imagine the things that must have happened.
Like we kind of said in the pre-show, is just, hey, it's what I grew up with. It was my environment. I didn't know any better. So yeah, hey, was it competitive? For sure it was. My brother's 8 years older than I am. So I was definitely getting, beat up occasionally here and there by my brother, who was clearly my senior by many years. But nonetheless, my brother, my father, my sister, all of us were extremely competitive. We love to have fun. We love to have fun just playing different games out in the backyard, for the certain holidays. Had a little turkey bowl the other day for Thanksgiving. That went great. We kind of split the family up, and it was a good matchup. My sister's actually married to Brian Toll, who was ACC Rookie of the Year back in the day, who's also a fantastic football player. So yeah, it gets competitive, and we have a good time, and we're not afraid to scrape our knees and be aggressive in the backyard.
So the real question though is, who gets to play quarterback during the Turkey Bowl?
Yeah. Well, luckily, my brother was like the captain of one team and I was like the captain of the other team. So we got to share the reps evenly. Big Phil is really just the announcer on the side. He doesn't really care, just as long as, the nieces and nephews don't get hurt. And, it's just a great opportunity, really. We enjoy it. We love the game so much. It's been so, it's been so, satisfying, and we're just so grateful, to be a part of this game in any way that we can be, to help young athletes and to play the game ourselves the way that we did. So it's truly a blessing.
All right. So I'm going to get you out of here on this. You talk about, just the game of football being a blessing. What has been sort of the greatest thing about having football in and around your life, since you were born? What has football brought to you that means the most to you?
Man, I would say that really football has just done a great job of just allowing me to be in multiple circles of lives, and to meet so many different people from different backgrounds, different cultures, and to be introduced to them, and to be into locker rooms with great teammates, and to get to know their families. All those things are just, memories that I'll never forget. And I really appreciate all the teammates that I've met through the years from all over the country. So football has been a great blessing that way, of allowing me to see our great country, to see all the different environments, and, go play games at LSU and compete against the Tigers and, the Gators and all those guys. And, it's just been truly fun to be a part of that adventure in the football world.
That's incredible. All right, Matt. Well, we really, really appreciate you taking some time and sharing your knowledge with all of us here today on Believe in Badgers. Where can people find out more about you and what you're doing?
We're on the first team, Believe, me, Joe DeLeon, and also Ryan Roberts. We break down some of the recruits that are going into college. I'm also at Sims Complete QB, where I coach local quarterbacks here in the tri-state area. So we dominate here in New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. But hey, it doesn't matter wherever you're from. If you want to get some work with us, you come on up here. But Sims Complete QB, the first team podcast here on Believe, and a few other nuanced things. So we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate the time. Make sure to be subscribing to both the Believe YouTube page, our Believe in Badgers YouTube page, and obviously the podcast feed, So we'll be back later this week with a little holiday celebration. I want to wish a happy Hanukkah to everyone out there, especially on behalf of the Hebrew Hammer, who's not with us today. He'll be back next week with me. But until then, you've been listening to the Believe in Badger Football podcast on the Believe Podcast Network, presented by betonline.ag. And until next time, on Wisconsin.